Arena of Sovereigns had hosted 1,000 duels across centuries, colossal beasts with armored hides, winged predators that shredded through steel, creatures bred in gravity wells that would crush a human flat. And today the seats trembled with laughter, because a human cadet had been selected to face them. The whispers spread like wildfire. Brittle bones, paper-thin skin, lungs that collapsed in dust storms. The audience leaned forward, already savoring the spectacle. They expected fragility to shatter under strength. They expected screams, maybe a quick surrender. If only they had remembered history. If only they had asked why a species that breaks so easily refuses to stay down. Why every empire that underestimated humans wrote its regrets in blood. The gong struck and silence fell. The fragile girl stepped into the light. And that was when the arena learned. Humans were polite until they weren't. The Arena of Sovereigns was a cathedral of violence, hewn from black stone and ringed with banners from 100 empires. Its walls had seen creatures with hides thicker than starship hulls bleed into the sand. It was where reputations were carved, and where species proved their dominance before the galaxy. And today, for the first time in living memory, the announcers' voices cracked with disbelief as a human cadet's name was read. The crowd's laughter rolled like thunder. Humans were not supposed to stand here. They were frail, with bones that snapped like twigs and skin that split at the slightest impact. In the databanks, their physiology barely ranked above baseline prey. Their blood carried too little iron, their musculature too little density. They were a curiosity at best, tolerated at the academies as a token experiment. The notion of one standing in the arena against apex predators who had conquered half the known sectors wasn't bravery. It was a joke, and jokes the crowd believed ended quickly in blood. Across the sands, Korrak flexed his arms, each muscle plated with jagged scales. His people were bred for war and crushing gravity, each blow carrying the force of a landslide. Beside him, Serik twitched his four-bladed arms in a blur of motion, chittering laughter spilling from mandibles sharp enough to carve alloy. Between brute force and impossible speed, the outcome was already decided. At least that was the expectation. The audience leaned forward, not to witness a fight, but to savor the humiliation. High above, Commander Rezik Tor, a feline predator whose eyes gleamed with cruelty, smirked down at the fragile girl waiting in the gate's shadow. He spoke loud enough for his words to carry across the arena. "Try not to fall apart too quickly, human." The crowd paid for a spectacle. The laughter that followed was as sharp as claws raking stone. Rin Halden stood motionless, her frame appearing almost too slight beneath the arena's harsh light. No talons, no fangs, no shimmering armor. Just a human cadet, hands steady at her sides, gaze fixed straight ahead. To the untrained eye, she looked lost. To the predators watching, she looked like a lamb walking into a slaughter pen. And yet, there was something unsettling in the way she breathed. Slow, even. Like someone waiting, not for mercy, but for inevitability. What could a human possibly achieve here? That question whispered from balcony to balcony. The answers came with mockery. Nothing. At best, a fleeting dodge. At worst, a quick scream before silence. If only the crowd had looked closer. If only they had asked why humans had a history written in wars no other species could comprehend. If only they had wondered why a fragile race, so easily broken, refused to stay broken. The gong struck once, a sound that echoed like a war drum through the vast Colosseum. The gates creaked open. Dust swirled in the sudden gust of air. Korrak growled low, Serik hissed sharp, and thousands of voices fell to silence, eager to see the fragile girl stumble into her grave. But Rin Halden did not stumble. She stepped forward into the arena with a calmness that sent an unexpected ripple through the crowd. She did not bow, she did not flinch. She simply lifted her chin, eyes narrowing as the sun caught the edge of her gaze. For the first time that day, laughter faltered. The Arena of Sovereigns had silenced many with death, but it had never fallen quiet before a fight even began. The silence didn't last long. Jeers rose again, sharper this time, as if the crowd needed to drown out the discomfort gnawing at their edges. Fragile creatures weren't supposed to look calm when staring down giants, and yet the human cadet did. Arena Overseer Commander Razek Tor leaned into his mic, voice curling with disdain. "We remind the audience that combatants enter willingly. No mercy will be granted. No interference permitted. The human cadet, Rin Halden, stands by choice. Let her frailty be her lesson." He let the words hang, savoring the roar that followed. In truth, Rin hadn't chosen. Not exactly. Her placement had been a clerical accident, or so the officials claimed. A bureaucratic shuffle, a misfiled entry, and suddenly her name had been drawn for the sovereign trials. Some whispered it wasn't an accident at all, but a calculated insult by alien administrators eager to demonstrate humanity's weakness in front of the council. Whatever the truth, she hadn't objected. That in itself was unsettling. Humans rarely refused a challenge, even when failure seemed certain. As attendants escorted her across the staging floor, her hands remained steady at her sides. No tremor, no hesitation. The overseer offered her a choice of weapons: curved blades, spiked mauls, plasma-forged spears humming with energy. She studied them for a heartbeat, then shook her head. "Unnecessary," she said quietly. The attendant blinked, confused. "Bare hands?" Rin only nodded. Somewhere in the balconies, laughter turned nervous. Why refuse weapons? Why walk into slaughter with nothing but bone and skin? Questions buzzed across the arena. Questions with answers no one wanted to admit. Humans weren't famed for claws or teeth. They were famed for something far more dangerous: adaptability. Meanwhile, her opponents prepared with showmanship meant to reassure the crowd. Korrak Thal slammed his fists into the stone floor, each blow sending cracks spidering outward. Serik Vale whirled his forearms in a blur, blades shrieking against each other in a metallic symphony. They basked in the cheers, confident that the human's presence was nothing but a delay before their triumph. From the stands, a cluster of academy cadets leaned in, whispering. "Why isn't she panicking?" one asked. "Because," another muttered, "she's either insane or she knows something we don't." The thoughts spread like a virus. If only the others had wondered the same. If only they had remembered that the deadliest fighters were never the loudest. Commander Razek's tail flicked with irritation. He'd expected tears, begging, collapse. Instead, he found himself staring at a cadet who stood straighter with every insult hurled her way. "Begin," he snarled, impatient to watch the human break. The gong loomed above them, suspended between silence and violence. Rin exhaled slowly, shoulders lowering, body loosening in a way that seemed almost casual. That was when Serik Vale hissed a joke in his own tongue. The translation rippled through headsets. "Try not to snap her too quickly, Korrak. We came for entertainment," the crowd roared, but Rin's lips curved just slightly. A smile, subtle, cold, unreadable. And in that moment, the first sliver of unease cut through the Colosseum. Why would anyone smile before facing death? The gong struck again. The fight began. The gong's echo had barely faded when Korrak Thal lunged. Dust exploded beneath his feet, the ground shuddering as if a quake had struck. His scaled fist tore through the air with the weight of a falling boulder. The crowd leaned forward, ready for the crunch of fragile bones. But the crunch never came. Rin Halden did not move. Not a step, not a flinch. She simply tilted her head, the fist passing inches from her face, close enough to ruffle strands of her hair. The Colosseum gasped as the shockwave rippled past her. Why wasn't she afraid? Why did she stand in the path of destruction and smile? Korrak snarled, scales glinting in the arena's light. He slammed his other fist down, stone cracking under the impact. Rin sidestepped, weight shifting with surgical precision. Her feet barely disturbed the sand. He missed again. The crowd murmured, uncertain. Predators did not miss prey. Prey did not move like that. Had they misunderstood what fragility meant? Korrak roared, frustration mounting. His people were built for crushing, not chasing shadows. He swung again, wide, brutal, decisive, and for the first time Rin struck back. A subtle pivot, her hands snapping into a gap beneath his plated ribs. Just one strike, barely a touch. The giant staggered. Gasps rippled through the balconies. The overseer narrowed his eyes. That wasn't possible. No human hand should have forced Korrak back. Yet there he was, shaken, clutching at his side. For the first time in centuries, a cadet whispered in awe. The arena doubted its outcome. Serik Vale screeched from the opposite side, his forearms blurring. He darted forward, body a streak of razors and cutting, speed too fast for the eye to follow. He came at her in a storm of blades. The crowd cheered again, relieved. Speed killed what strength could not. Too fast? Not for her. Rin didn't retreat. She stepped in. Her hands rose, not to block but to redirect. Each blade that slashed toward her met air, twisted aside by a fraction. She moved like water, flowing between impossible gaps. Serik hissed, disbelief cracking through his rhythm. He was supposed to be untouchable. And yet she slipped through him like smoke. And that was his first mistake. Serik lunged with all four arms at once, overextending. Rin pivoted low, her hands seizing a joint at the base of his limb. With a twist, his own momentum betrayed him. The speedster slammed into the sand, blades scattering grit into the air. The Colosseum froze. Korrak bellowed in fury, rushing forward to crush her under sheer mass. But Rin was already moving, her body weaving between them. She wasn't faster. She wasn't stronger. She was precise. Every step, every angle, every strike landed with intent. She wasn't surviving the arena. She was dismantling it. How could bare hands undo centuries of dominance? Someone cried from the stands. The crowd's jeers faltered into silence. Whispers spread, disbelief turning into unease. This wasn't supposed to happen. A human wasn't supposed to last this long, let alone force predators onto the back foot. Korrak swung again, teeth bared. She met him with another short strike, knuckles driving into a cluster of nerves along his neck. His roar cut short into a choking gasp. The brute stumbled, dropping to one knee. He never stood up again. The Colosseum erupted in chaos, voices clashing in disbelief. Serik scrambled upright, mandibles rattling, eyes wide with something his kind wasn't supposed to feel. Fear. His speed was meaningless if his strikes never landed. His blades were worthless if she kept turning them against him. Predators weren't supposed to feel fear. Yet here it was, trembling in the way Serik hesitated before charging again. Rin straightened, breathing calm, gaze locked on him. No words, no taunts, just steady eyes that dared him to step closer. The arena went silent. Two predators, one prey, or so they thought. Korrak forced himself back onto his feet with a guttural roar, fury twisting through every movement. His scales shimmered under the harsh arena light, blood seeping through tiny cracks where her strike had landed. He was the mountain, the immovable wall, and he would not be humiliated by a fragile creature born on a backwater planet. Serik hissed in chorus, four arms spread wide, every blade angled to shred. For the first time, the brute and the speedster moved together. Their coordination was flawless. Serik's blur of strikes funneled Rin into Korrak's reach, each attack forcing her closer to his crushing fists. It was the perfect trap, strength and speed converging from both sides. The crowd surged to their feet, eager for blood, certain this would end it. But Rin did not resist the funnel. She flowed with it, step by step, retreat by retreat. She allowed herself to be herded, as though cornered. Her expression remained calm, too calm. Did fragility mean weakness or flexibility? The final strike came. Korrak's hammering fist descended like a meteor, Serik's bladed arms cutting off every escape. Dust and wind swallowed the human in a storm of force. And then they collided. The crowd gasped as sand exploded. When the haze cleared, It was not Rin lying broken on the ground. It was Serik Vale, sprawled in the dirt, his own momentum twisted against him. Korrak staggered backward, clutching his chest where another precise strike had landed, rage twisting into disbelief. How could bare hands undo centuries of dominance? The Overseer's claws dug into the railing. He had mocked humans all his life, called them fragile, called them irrelevant. Yet here, in the most sacred arena of the galaxy, the myth of weakness cracked like glass. Rin advanced, one step at a time, not rushing, not taunting, just steady, unstoppable. Korrak roared, throwing his full mass into one final charge. It was the kind of blow that had shattered stone beasts and toppled armored foes. But Rin's body moved with impossible precision, slipping inside his guard. Her fist struck a nerve cluster just beneath his jaw. His roar turned to a strangled gasp. His legs buckled. He never stood up again. The Colosseum erupted, not in cheers but in chaos. Gasps, shouts, disbelief. The brute of stone had fallen to the human's bare hands. Only Serik remained, eyes wide, mandibles rattling in fear. Mindless predators weren't supposed to feel fear. Serik darted backwards, no longer attacking but circling, searching for escape. He was fast, yes, but what good was speed if every strike was turned aside? What good was agility if his enemy never faltered? Rin's breathing stayed calm, her shoulders loose, every step measured. She wasn't chasing him, she was waiting. And that was worse. The crowd, once a storm of laughter, now held its breath. Silence pressed down like a weight, thicker with every heartbeat. The Overseer's tail lashed in agitation. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here, not to them. And then she moved. A single step forward. Just one. The arena went silent. Chaos swallowed the arena of sovereigns. Voices clashed in disbelief, thousands shouting at once, yet none with triumph. It was not the roar of victory, it was the howl of a truth the galaxy didn't want to accept. No one clapped. Medics rushed the sand, swarming around Korrak Thal's massive frame and Serik Vale's twisted limbs. They had expected shattered bones, fountains of blood, the aftermath of brutality. Instead, their scans returned strange results. Dislocated joints, compressed nerve clusters, targeted trauma points. No wasted force, no accidental fractures. Every strike had been deliberate. Was this restraint or cruelty? Korrak still breathed, though his body convulsed with every attempt to move. Serik's arms dangled uselessly at his sides, tendons severed with surgical precision. Neither was dead. Both were broken, and the human cadets stood over them, calm, unshaken, as if dismantling apex predators was routine. Commander Razek Tor leapt from the Overseer's platform, his claws gouging grooves into the stone floor as he landed. His voice roared across the arena. "Impossible! Fraud! No human could do this! Tell me what trick you've played!" His tail lashed, his fangs bared, but the girl did not answer. She didn't flinch. Her silence was worse than defiance. It was as if his rage didn't matter, as if his entire authority meant nothing. The Overseer's snarl deepened, but before he could lash out again, another voice cut through the uproar. "Commander!" Dr. Elias Rin, a human physician stationed at the academy, stepped forward from the medic ranks. He carried no weapons, only a datapad, his calm presence a blade sharper than Razek's fury. His voice was steady, clinical. "What you have witnessed is not trickery, it is humanity." Razek scoffed, spittle flying. "Humanity? A joke! Their bones snap in training drills. Their muscles tear under strain. Their skin bruises from a simple blow. How does weakness dismantle warriors?" Dr. Wren tilted his head. "Because you mistake fragility for failure. Humans endure damage you cannot imagine. Where your kind dies quickly, we adapt. Where you heal slowly, we scar stronger. Pain is not our enemy, it is our teacher." Why did every empire that underestimated humans fall? Ren continued, his words threading into the stunned silence. We are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the fiercest, but we are the ones who keep standing after others fall. On our homeworld, predators faster than Serik chased us. We learned endurance, hunts that lasted not hours but days. Beasts greater than Korrak crushed our kin. We learned to strike where it mattered, and only where it mattered. We survived ice ages, plagues, wars. Weakness forced us to adapt. Fragility forced us to innovate. The medics exchanged glances, their instruments confirming what his words revealed. Every strike Rin had delivered had bypassed armor, scales, and chitin to target the exact points where physiology gave way. Not wasted energy, not reckless force. Knowledge applied with precision. Humans didn't stop. The whispers spread through the cadet ranks in the balconies. If this is what a student can do, what would their soldiers be like? The question hung heavier than any roar. Ren's eyes swept the arena. You mocked her fragility, yet she stands while your champions cannot rise. Fragile? No. Fragility was camouflage, a mask we have worn since our beginnings. You saw weakness, and so you stopped looking deeper. The overseer opened his mouth, but no words came. His authority, his scorn, his certainty, all stripped away in a single afternoon. He looked down at the girl who had said almost nothing, who had chosen no weapons, who now stood as if the weight of the galaxy's judgment couldn't touch her. The Colosseum, once loud enough to shake its walls, now sat in suffocating silence. A silence that demanded an answer no alien wanted to give. And beyond that silence, one truth grew louder. This would not end here. The Council would hear of this. And once they did, the galaxy's rules would change. Envoy Sheladren carried the report into the Council chamber with trembling hands. She had attended hundreds of trials, witnessed predators tear each other apart. But she had never walked through those doors carrying silence. Not the silence of death, the silence of fear. The counselors reviewed the footage again. Again. A dozen species, each with reputations carved in blood and conquest, watched as a human cadet dismantled their champions with bare hands. Some hissed denial. Others muttered about fraud. But the recordings did not lie. Every strike, every breath, every moment of precision played back in brutal clarity. The arena's silence followed her. Debate ignited, desperate to contain the truth. Should humans be banned from trials? Should cadets be restricted to observation only? One counselor slammed a clawed fist. They are too fragile to belong here, until they decide not to be. That is the danger. A vote was taken. New protocols passed without resistance. No longer would humans be mocked or underestimated. No longer would they be thrown into combat unprepared. Every academy, every arena, every training hall across the Council's reach would require alien cadets to study human combat doctrine before ever facing them. Knowledge was no longer optional. It was survival. Why teach predators caution, unless prey were something worse? Reports trickled in from other academies. A duel in the outer colonies where a human cadet disarmed a clawed veteran in 3 moves. A skirmish during field training where 2 humans outlasted an entire squad by refusing to tire. Coincidence or pattern? The whispers grew louder. Ambassadors tried to soften the narrative. Humans do not fight like others, they explained. They do not fight for spectacle. They do not fight for pride. They fight to end the fight. The word spread, repeated in council halls, academies, and mess halls alike. The laughter that had once greeted the mention of humanity's fragility no longer came. And in private chambers, more chilling truths were spoken. Fragility had never been weakness. It had been the cover under which humanity honed the most dangerous trait of all: refusal. Refusal to surrender. Refusal to accept defeat. Refusal to die quietly. What happens when restraint is removed? That question hung over the council long after the debate ended. No decree could answer it. No regulation could contain it. The final report was filed, stamped, archived. Its closing line was brief. Humans do not fight to win. They fight so no one dares fight them again.